Hello everyone, it is Pelican Dude, and welcome to my little patch update video. So a giant patch just hit Planetary Annihilation. If you're not on Uber Entertainment's forums or following them on Twitter, you may not have realized this yet, unless of course you fired up the game and suddenly noticed a bunch of new things and things not behaving quite the way that you're used to them. So basically we have a lot of cool stuff here. So we had a complete balance overhaul where a lot of units have been adjusted, and then we also, most excitingly perhaps, got 3 brand new units. So the first new unit up is the Phoenix. So this is the return of the advanced fighter, which we had towards the beginning of the game, but then kind of got removed later on for balance purposes, but now it is back again, but with a unique trait. So it is better at air-to-air combat than just the Tech 1 fighter. So to give you a rough idea of about how well it performs in my limited tests so far, is that if you have one of them, one Phoenix, one Tech 2 fighter versus 2 Tech 1 fighters, it will win, so it will kill both of them, but it will obviously take a fair bit of damage. But if you have 3 Tech 1 fighters, they will kill the Phoenix. So that kind of gives you a rough idea to base your calculations on for doing combat and all that good stuff. However, this box feature, the feature that the box would have, I guess, if this was a product you'd buy in the store, is it can move between planets. So yes, this is actually, it's not an orbital fighter, it cannot target orbital units, but you can set a move point to another planet and it kind of goes all SSTO and will launch into orbit and fly to the new planet and then drop down into the atmosphere and be ready for air-to-air combat. So it's a nice way of sending some aircraft with your invasion forces. If you're doing an orbital drop pod or maybe teleporting units there, you can easily send air-to-air aircraft to other planets now, which is very nice. Also, the Pelican, so the air transport, has been moved to the T1 air factory. That's the other air change right now, so you'll have access to air transports sooner. And then we have the return of the Submarines. The Submarines, a lot of people will remember early on in the game, there were a couple of submarines in the game. But there were just some balance issues. They didn't really go underwater at all. They just kind of stayed on the surface, so that kind of made them pointless. And then the naval units in general at the beginning of the game were far less balanced than they are now, especially with this new patch update. So there's a couple things about the submarines. The one thing I say that will need to be, in my opinion, needs to be worked on is it would be really great if they could reduce the, increase the depth at which they are active at in the world, because right now, like the conning tower or whatever, sticks up a little bit above the water, and it just doesn't look all that great to me. But if they could just get that underwater all the way, that would be perfect. But I'm just happy to have them in general, to be honest. So first of all, we have a basic submarine, the Barracuda. That's a Tech 1 unit. And it has a health of 550, and its metal cost is 500, and it fires torpedoes. So these are basically the same torpedoes that the Orca used to have. However, the Orca no longer has the torpedoes. Destroyers no longer have torpedoes, and the frigates now do. There's been some different balance changes like that to help improve gameplay. But anyway, this basically has the same torpedoes that we're used to on the most ships, and except now they fire from underwater. And it's fairly effective against other vessels. It's not the most effective thing in the world, but it's definitely nice to have. It's another option, and it goes underwater, so that's pretty cool. And then we also have the more exciting one, in my opinion, the stealth submarine, or the Kraken. So the health cost is, not the health cost. Metal cost is 1800 and the health is 2100. So it's a fairly can take a bit more of a pounding than the Tech 1 submarine. And this one can actually fire missiles. So it fires torpedoes that are basically exactly the same as every other torpedo, except it also fires missiles, and this thing is beast. It is definitely one of the better vessels, or has one of the cooler looking attacks, I should say. It just absolutely unloads on the enemy, and it does a pretty good amount of damage too. It can tear through a lot of the lighter structures and even more healthy structures like energy storage and factories. It'll destroy pretty quickly. So it is an impressive little ship, and as you can see, it is actually going to take out the enemy commander here. So definitely a useful vessel. You might claim maybe it's a little overpowered. I don't think so, because to be honest, it's really nice to have a really nice naval vessel, because I feel like naval forces just in general are used so little in this game that it's kind of cool to have more of an incentive to actually build them. That's pretty nice in my opinion. So yeah, the Kraken is awesome. I would highly recommend checking it out. So on to some of the more mundane patches. So like I said, the destroyer, the Orca, the torpedo was removed and given to the Narwhal, the frigate. The fire rate on the destroyer was raised a little bit on its cannon to compensate for this, and also the range of its cannon was increased from 180 to 200, which makes it a bit more effective for bombarding land units and land targets in general, so that's nice. And of course it makes it more powerful against other ships as well. The gunboat got definitely a pretty significant buff, so the move speed was increased from 15 to 20, and the acceleration was increased from 150 to 200. So basically that just means it's faster. And so this is obviously useful because it's nice to actually have a gunboat slash scout boat that is actually useful for, you know, running around and doing things that you would expect a little light boat to do, as opposed to just being a little bit sluggy. So it's nice to see that finally coming for the gunboat, and perhaps we will still have skeet swarms yet. The frigate, like I said, it just got the torpedo added to it, and then it reduced the rate of fire on the cannon to compensate for that. The advanced torpedo launcher had its fire rate slightly reduced. The basic torpedo launcher had a slight health increase and a metal cost decrease. The missile ship, the Stingray, the advanced missile ship, had a buff. The health was increased from 1,000 to 3,000, and the missile rate of fire was slightly increased, the missile range was slightly increased, and the missile damage was doubled from 500 to 1,000. Also, all tactical missile units, I believe with the exception of the Hornet, which is the Tech 2 tactical missile bomber, can now target orbital units. However, I believe all of them only do 50% damage to orbital units, so they only do half of their normal damage that they would do to a land target to an orbital unit. So just a fun little note that you guys can remember now. So catapults and tactical missile bots and missile ships and all of those units will now target orbital units as well. So definitely you're going to need to make perhaps more, you're going to have to be a little bit more careful with your orbital units, is essentially the point. However, to counter this, the anchor has been reduced in cost, which is, you know, the anchor can actually shoot at land units. And in addition to that, the orbital laser is now cheaper and more healthy as well. So it got a slight health buff, and the cost was reduced to 1/4. So you will likely see a lot more of those. Now the damage of the weapon was also reduced, but considering you'll be able to make several of them for the cost of one, I don't think this is quite as big of a deal. So yeah, that is basically all of the stuff that is more, you know, worth mentioning. It's now cheaper to build unit cannons by a little bit, I guess, or something along those lines. And it is now more expensive to build the teleporter, twice as expensive in fact. But other than that, if you guys want to check out the full list of everything that was changed, I will have a link in the description of the video to the forum thread, and yeah, have fun enjoying the new units and the new balance. And with that, have a nice day.